Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today I've got a comparison of two really cool knives, guys. And this is going to be a great video to do because I love both of these and it's fun to be able to talk about something you really love. Now, I wanted to compare these two. One, there was a request for this, but also because these kind of share a philosophy, okay? And they're a philosophy that I enjoy. Both of these are overbuilt heavy-duty knives, but they're overbuilt heavy-duty knives that are still designed to cut stuff, okay? And to me, that's kind of a key feature of a knife. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think knives should cut stuff. Before I get into the specific similarities and differences and talk about all the different features and blade and ergonomics and all that kind of stuff, I do want to point out there's a significant difference in price between these two, okay? I'm aware of that, and part of, I guess, what this video will probably do, and part of the reason maybe people have requested this comparison is because they want to have an understanding of, hey, if I love Andrew Demko and I really, it's hard to justify spending the money on a custom Demko, and I totally agree with you on that, by the way, is the Formax going to kind of do it for me, okay? Well, we'll talk about that as we work our way through. And of course, I'll allow you guys to make up your own minds. There certainly are some extra refinements here that you're not going to get here. But maybe that'll change, okay? And we'll mention that as well. So let's go ahead and get into our full discussion, beginning with size and weight. Obviously, if you're just looking at this, you can tell the Formax is bigger, okay? Formax is 10 inches overall. The 80-15 is 8 5/8 inches overall. Now, there are some things here that are odd along those lines. 4 1/8 inches on the blade here and 3 3/4 inches on the blade here. So you're only losing like a little over 1/4 of an inch in blade length for, a much smaller package. And that I think ought to be considered. The blade to handle ratio is not stellar on the Formax. You've got a 6-inch handle and a 4-inch blade. I don't know where that extra 2 inches goes, but it clearly goes. Okay, so that's something that you're gonna wanna consider. And the other thing, of course, is going to be weight. This thing weighs in at 10 ounces, which is insane for a folding knife. This one is 6.5, which is still heavy, but not 10 ounces, okay? 10 ounces is extreme when it comes to, what you're gonna carry around in your pocket. And honestly, I carry the Formax only in limited situations because of the fact that it is so big and so heavy. Now, from this sort of size, weight, and carry perspective, the 80-15 is absolutely the better option. You're getting almost as much blade length in a much smaller package. You're not really sacrificing anything in terms of toughness or durability. And so, yeah, if I've got to pick one of these to carry with me in my pocket all the time, obviously I'm going with the 80-15. Now, I guess, the thing that's going to keep coming up and that some of you may want to point out is that, the difference would be you'd have a lot more money in your other pocket if you were carrying the Formax. Granted, all right? Now, one thing I will say is I'll be interested to see if ColdSteel comes out with something else along the lines of the Formax. I really hope they do. At that point, it's sort of like, ColdSteel, just take my money now. All right, so size and weight, yeah, absolutely. The Formax is crazy big, and so for the vast majority of the population, the 80-15 is going to be the choice there. Let's move on though to the blade, because I think things might get a little bit different here. On the Formax, we have a very high flat ground blade with a bit of a flat here and a nice swedge at the top. It's a very Demko blade shape. You can see the similarity between these two blades. Again, we have a pretty high flat grind, stonewash on the flats. This guy, of course, is all stonewash. The steel here, 20 CV S35 VN. So how do those compare? Well, this is a little more of an interesting conversation because, well, these are fairly comparable. Both of them are quite thin behind the edge, and both of them, work pretty well in most regular cutting tasks. The Formax actually slices a little better. Okay, I suppose you could make the argument that maybe it's not as tough then, but that'd be a tough argument to sustain, okay? It's still very tough. The difference is the grind is so much higher here that it's a much more gradual angle that you're dealing with. So when you're cutting through some kind of material, you're not having as much of a fight to push the blade through that material with this guy as you are with this, okay? So while those blades are very similar, they're similar in design, they're similar in length, you know, there is an advantage to the extra width on the Formax, and that is that it slices a little better than the 8015. All right, now, you know, you look at the Formax and you go, how could that slice better than anything? But the reality is this does slice just marginally better, and I do prefer 20 CV steel over S35VN. S35VN is a great steel, and there are Formaxes, by the way, available in other steels and probably in 20 CV, although not this one. So that's a further consideration. All right, so there you go, guys. That's my take on these two blades. I've got to give that point just barely to the Formax. It is a slightly better performing blade. I think the two, in terms of looks, are pretty equal. Let's see. We'll talk about the thumb stud after. Let's go to lockup and deployment. Here, of course, we have the triad lock, and it is very well executed in this knife. This is one of the smoothest, easiest to actuate triad locks that I've seen. The knife is drop shut. It is a thumb stud deployment, and it's a very comfortable thumb stud. They use a very similar thumb stud. When they built the Formax, they were definitely going with sort of Andrew Demko design cues there. And the Formax is absolutely, I mean, and the thumb stud is definitely a Demko thumb stud. Nice big heavy duty lock, very strong, you know, stupidly overly built strong. All right, great. That's the triad lock. Now let's take a look at the Scorpion lock. Scorpion lock is absolutely cool and innovative. So simple. You just got this bar that drops in. Now I will say the lock bar will have a little bit of wiggle when it first drops in, and as soon as you touch that, it's rock solid, okay? From here, it's absolutely solid as a rock, and that's because this bar can take a second or two to kind of drop into that groove. So in terms of strength, you could maybe argue the triad lock is a little stronger, although look at the design of this. Look at the simplicity of it. How would you ever get this to fail? Okay. Further, the Scorpion lock is definitely more fun and a lot cooler. So which of these two actions am I going to prefer? Kind of got to give it to the Scorpion lock, guys, just for, even if it's just for cool factor alone, but innovation, you know, ease, it works really, really quickly, really, really easily. Yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but I mean, phenomenal, guys, really, really phenomenal. So lock has definitely got to go to the 8015. Both are very smooth. We've got Teflon washers here, phosphor bronze washers here, and I know some people don't like the Teflon washers. I totally get that. A lot of makers prefer them because they do have a lower coefficient of friction than phosphor bronze. That means they slide better. Okay. And so that's lockup and deployment. And they're very different. And I think the appeal, part of the big appeal of the 8015 is that Scorpion lock. Now, it may be that this is going to be a moot point at some point, you know, in the not too distant future, because I've heard from a number of sources that there are plans for ColdSteel to do some models with the Scorpion lock. My understanding is that they've negotiated with Andrew Demko and they figured out how the whole payment is going to work and all that kind of stuff. So that's something you may be seeing. In fact, you may even see something similar to an 8015 in sort of a production version, which would be amazing. All right, so let's move on now to the ergonomics and the handle on this. And I guess part of that could be the thumb stud. Both of these thumb studs are very, very comfortable. So let's just say they're about equal, and move on to the actual handle construction and ergonomics. Construction on this, of course, is G10 over titanium with a titanium lock bar, and you've got the Scorpion lock with that sort of neat open line inside, which makes the knife really, really cool and definitely adds a lot of visual interest. Here we have a more standard handle. It is nicely contoured and extremely comfortable. There's tons of G10, titanium liners, and of course, the triad lock means that it's sort of a full backspacer here. Okay, so it's more closed. It's going to be a little more difficult for cleaning. But very, very strong, very robust. And I would argue that about both of these knives. All right. Now, which one is more comfortable? Well, This guy is a little more squared off, and the jimping is not quite as well done. The finger choil, now this is a very comfortable knife, and I absolutely like it. The finger choil is just a little small. You've got to be very careful if you're using it. On the Formax, of course, no, it is extremely comfortable. There's no hard edges. Everything is rounded. Everything is smooth. It feels great in hand. Okay, so in terms of ergonomics, the Formax has got to take it. It's more rounded. These edges are a little more squared off. And so for a number of reasons, the Formax is a little more comfortable. And in pocket, the Formax is a little more comfortable because sort of the ease of those transitions. This guy tends to bind a little bit or to create sort of some harsh angles in your pocket. So that's all of the different features of the knife. In general, they came out fairly equally. The Formax, of course, both of these, let's say this, both of these have features that are prohibitive for a lot of people. The Formax, the size alone is going to keep it out of most people's pockets. The 8015, the price alone is going to keep it out of most people's pockets. So we're dealing with knives here that are kind of niche already. Both are going to be loved, I believe, by Andrew Demko fans, and big Andrew Demko fans maybe already have both of these. All right, so which one should you buy? If you love your Formax, does that mean you'll love an 8015? Yeah, it probably does because they're very similar in philosophy. And if you love your 8015, would a Formax make a good knife for maybe a user or something when you want something a little more carryable or a little more you don't have to worry about as much? Possibly. All right, now obviously you're not going to get that Scorpion lock, which is extremely cool and extremely interesting anywhere else outside of an Andrew Demko custom knife until, of course, ColdSteel releases something in a production version. So that's how these two compare. You know, I think this is one of those choices where, oh man, because they're both sort of occasional carry knives for me, I would probably lean a little more toward the Formax because of the slightly better cutting performance and because it's a lower price, so I'm not quite as concerned about it as I am this guy. So there you go. That's sort of my take on these two knives. Both amazing, amazing knives. Andrew Demko is one of my favorite knife designers, and I would highly recommend either one of these. If you're looking at them and you just particularly love one as you look down here, yeah, pick the one that you really like, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your comments down below on your take on these two knives. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.